The next step is to pretty much do exactly what we just did. We're just going to give ourselves the entire box here. So just remember that we're traveling from one root to another root. You shouldn't really try to think, again, don't get fancy with the phrasing or anything yet. Just kind of get from one root to the next root, dance around the notes around it, but make sure you're always landing on a root and letting that hang for a little bit. Now we're just trying to familiarize ourselves with the roots in context to the full scale. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So as you can tell, we're just putting everything together, giving ourselves the full box, and really focusing on those roots. This, in and of itself, is fun enough, like, especially if you're just starting out this stuff. It's great. It sounds good. It's simple. It's easy. We can just keep going with it. Now that we've really explored the depths of the tonality of the minor pentatonic scale, let's add a little bit of flourish to it. What we're going to talk about now is bending. Now there's 3 spots that I really like to bend in the first position minor pentatonic. The first one is the 13th fret of the B string. Now when we bend this a full step up, we end up with the same note as the 10th fret of the E string, which is the root of the scale. So this is a really important note to be aware of when you're bending it while you're phrasing, because it's another way to get back to the root, like this. So instead of hitting that 10th fret, we just bend the 13th fret of the E, or the B, up to the root. That's one option we have. Now, another place where we can bend is the first finger on the G. Now what this is going to do is make a minor third to a major third. Don't think about it too much, just bend it, find what you like about it. This is a really good example of isolating yourself to discover what bending on the first finger of the G can do for you, only by giving yourself the first finger of the G, the third finger on the D, and then the first finger on the D. So just give yourself these 3 notes, 10 and 12 on the D, and then the first finger on the 10th fret of the G. And then just kind of bend around on that note. So let's discover what we can do with that first finger on the G, just using these 3 notes, and whole step bends and half step bends, quarter bends, and just kind of messing with it. So that was a little bit of a guerrilla approach to, hitting that one note and bending it as much as we could. But I was just trying to show you that, with one note and a little bit of bending, it goes a really long way for phrasing. So we don't need a lot more than just 3 notes if we're bending one of them to really explore and make something sound good. Now the next note we're going to add bending to is pretty much the same way. It's the third finger on the G. So in this case, we're going to give ourselves 4 notes. We're going to do the 10th and 12th fret of the D string and the 10th and 12th fret of the G. But in this case, we're going to be able to bend that 12th fret of the G as much as we want. And we can also do the same thing we did with the first finger. We can do it a half step, a whole step, as far as you can go, and also quarter steps and things like that. So just approach it every possible way you know how, and really listen for what you're doing when you bend these notes, and find those sweet spots and find what you like or don't like, and then just repeat it over and over and over again. Let's see what that's going to sound like. that's a bit of an extreme example, but you get the idea. We're just, you can really spend time exploring, what one note can give you, especially in context with other notes. Now, the next step is something that you've probably already kind of heard about or done without realizing it, and it's adding notes to the minor pentatonic scale. The first one we're going to talk about is the flat 5. Now, this is also referred to as the blues scale, so a lot of you already know it. It goes like this. It's just an alteration of the minor pentatonic scale. So it's just adding in those flat 5s on the 11th fret of the A string and the 13th fret of the G. So we end up with kind of a new scale, so you just go through the same thing. You use the flat 5 and just play through the backing track and kind of focus on that note and see what it sounds like. Now, when you're adding in that flat 5 and playing over it, you want to discover the tonality. So you really want to focus on that note, on that flat 5 in context with the other notes around it, to see what it sounds like, and then what kind of feeling it kind of draws out of it. What kind of dissonance does it give you? What kind of like agreement or disagreement with other notes does it have? And then you can kind of use it in your bag of tricks as just like, if I want it to sound like this, I'll use a flat 5. So you just really explore the tonality of the note while you're adding it in and playing through it and listening to it. So spend your time really getting to know that flat 5. Now we're going to be adding another note to the minor pentatonic scale, and this is the major third. I'll say that adding a major third to the minor pentatonic scale is the first note when I started phrasing that really excited me. I don't know why, it's just one of those really, it's like, ooh, soulful, like I was like, oh sweet, this is how people sound like they actually know what they're doing. Now the locations of the major 3 in the minor pentatonic scale are going to be the 11th fret of the G. And the 14th fret of the high E and the 14th fret of the low E. There's a bunch of different ways to play this, but I'm trying to keep it built around the same shape. So now, if we only add the flat 3 and take if we only add the major 3 and take the flat 5 out, we end up with this scale shape. So all we're doing is adding the 14th fret of the E, the 11th fret of the G, and the 14th fret of the high E. Now, yet again, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to approach this major third, this new note that we added, over the backing track and really try to discover its tonality. We want to know what it sounds like and what it feels like by itself and in context to other notes, little ways to add it in, like sliding and bending and things like that, and really just explore as much as you can. I'll say with the major third, you have to be a little bit careful. Don't hang on the major 3, minor 3 intervals. You don't want to like sit there and go back and forth. You want to always resolve it to a root or a 5 when you get out of a major 3. So usually the root is going to go minor 3 to major 3 to root, and that's pretty cool. That's just a nice little sounding, lick. But I mean, really, there's a million ways to go about it. So just play over this backing track, adding in that minor or the major 3, and really listen for it and find your own phrasing inside of it. Spend as much time as you can and practice that. So now we've got like a flat 5 and a major 3, and we've got these notes that we can bend, and we've got a bunch of other stuff. And I suggest you use those tools by themselves and really begin exploring them one note at a time, one relationship at a time. You can never be too familiar with the very simple minor pentatonic shape.